One of my captains summed it up the best. He said this was like driving into hell, and it was.
Fire Chief Tim Pellerin and a group of volunteer firefighters drove from Maine to help put out the Lac-Mégantic inferno. The fire caused when a mile-long train carrying North Dakota crude derailed and exploded, killed 47 people. Pellerin was haunted by the devastation he had witnessed, haunted by the fear that something similar could happen in the U.S.
We're shipping millions and millions of gallons daily over the tracks, and people are sound asleep in their homes. These trains are rolling through at night. Nobody even realizes what's right next door to them, what could happen.
The crude that devastated Lac-Mégantic came from here, the Bakken oil fields of North Dakota, ground zero of the nation's domestic oil boom. A lack of pipeline infrastructure has spurred the railroads to create pipelines on wheels. So-called oil unit trains with over 100 tankers that can haul up to 3 million gallons of crude at a time. With so much oil moving over the nation's railways, the United States has already had some close calls.
We didn't know that it was Bakken crude at the time, but we knew that it was some type of crude oil.
Steve Ferguson is the fire chief in Lynchburg, Virginia.
All you could see was this huge ball of flame, and there were cars laying everywhere.
In April, a train carrying 105 tankers of North Dakota crude derailed in the middle of a workday when a rail bed gave away in downtown Lynchburg. Do you feel like your city dodged a bullet that day?
Well, maybe we dodged a bomb. We got hit by the bullet. Yeah, I think we were very fortunate. Could have fallen the other way, and this heavily populated restaurant right there, yeah, we would have had a whole different issue on it.
The near disaster in Lynchburg follows similar incidents in Alabama and North Dakota. Like Lac-Mégantic, those derailments and the fires that followed involved Bakken crude.
We have accumulated data from Castleton, North Dakota, from Aliceville, Alabama, Lac-Mégantic, and now Lynchburg.
Scott Smith, chief scientist at the environmental organization Water Defense, is one of those attempting to solve the mystery of why Bakken crude appears to be at the root of so many rail disasters.
Fresh Bakken crude, North Dakota.
Smith traveled to North Dakota and took samples of the crude.
Fresh out of the ground.
What he found was surprising. Tell me a little bit about the properties of this oil that make it different from other crudes.
What makes Bakken different is the clear, colorless volatiles. When you shake them up,
right,
it creates pressure.
Right.
And when that pressure is subject to a spark, a derailment, you get that explosion.
You get explosions like this one near Castleton, North Dakota, when an oil unit train clipped a derailed freight car. The oil industry has repeatedly insisted Bakken is no different from similar types of crude, but other independent studies support Smith's finding. The industry in North Dakota has said that the Bakken crude is what it calls within norms, that it's no more, it alleges, volatile or flammable than any other crude oil. What do you think of that?
That's just not the case from the analysis that we've done.
Reporter Rob Davis of the Oregonian commissioned an analysis after seeing a 250% increase in oil train traffic in Oregon just this past year.
The analysis that we did of oil that's moving through the state shows that it is far more volatile than gasoline that you put in your car, than any oil that moves through the country's pipeline system.
What was different?
A lot of propane, a lot of butane, a lot of methane and ethane. They're natural gas, basically.
In fact, Davis found that Bakken crude had 6 times more propane than comparable crude, making it more flammable and causing more pressure to build up during transport. And the Transportation Safety Board of Canada's analysis of the Bakken crude at Lac-Mégantic said the crude oil had a volatility comparable to that of a gasoline product. The explosiveness of North Dakota crude has sparked even greater concern across the river in Vancouver, Washington, where more than 2 oil unit trains pass through the city every day, and more could be on the way. Matt Landon belongs to a network of oil train spotters who use Twitter to bring attention to the dangers of the oil unit trains. What do you want people to know about these trains?
I want people to know when these trains are coming through our communities so they can be prepared. It's part of a risk assessment that the community needs to be able to be involved in.
The movement of millions of gallons of crude through the Columbia River Gorge on the way to West Coast refineries has also raised the specter of an environmental catastrophe.
An oil train derailment in the Columbia River Gorge would be devastating to the local economy, to the environment, and to all the people that live along the river and depend on it for their livelihood.
But it's the higher volume route to East Coast refineries through densely populated cities like Chicago that poses an even greater threat. BNSF, just one transporter of Bakken crude, brings 27 oil unit trains through Chicago's Cook County every week. When you saw the pictures from Lac Mégantic, what went through your mind?
There, but for the grace of God, it could have been in this town.
Karen Darch is the mayor. She visited Lac Mégantic after the disaster. What worries Darch most is the known vulnerability of the tankers, non-pressurized, thin-skinned DOT-111s that are being used to transport the crude. How would you characterize the DOT-111?
You know, I referred to it once as the Ford Pinto of rail cars, and I use that analogy because when it was involved in an accident, there were many times that it just burst into flame and exploded and people died needlessly.
Yet because of huge profits for oil companies and railways, tens of thousands of these older and weaker cars, never designed to carry flammable material, are being pressed into service to carry the bulk of Bakken crude.
To use Ralph Nader's terminology, the DOT-111 tank car is unsafe at any speed.
Jim Hall is former chairman of the NTSB.
The American people have not been adequately protected since the 1970s, when the NTSB issued its first study indicating problems with the DOT-111.
And again in 1991, when the NTSB found that at least half DOT-111s will leak when they derail. The Canadian Transportation Safety Board has finally decided that it will no longer permit DOT-111s to transport crude.
Hooray for the Canadians.
Why has the United States not followed suit?
Economics, it's the railroad industry, the tank car industry, don't want to go through the replacement of tank cars. The fix is a stronger tank car with a full head shield, thicker exterior skin, and more protection.
Representatives of the railway, railcar, and oil industries declined to be interviewed. Under pressure, the railways did agree in February to reduce oil unit train speeds in large cities. And the railcar industry says once the federal government finally issues new regulations, it will build stronger tankers.
Good morning.
In May, U.S. Transportation Secretary Anthony Fox recommended, but did not mandate, that oil companies avoid using the DOT-111 to move Bakken crude.
It's politics as usual at the Department of Transportation. Study, delay, don't act.
The DOT declined multiple requests for an interview. In a written statement, a spokesman says Secretary Fox has intently focused on improving the safe transportation of crude by rail since he took office.
Does it take a tragedy? Unfortunately, yes. Canada had its